Welcome to another episode of the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce here again with Zach Hewlett, and today we're joined by Keenan Price. How are you doing, Keenan?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing great.
I'm over the moon excited for this one. So yes, it's so good to see you, Keenan.
All right, Keenan, where are you calling from?
I am calling from Bountiful, Utah. So it's where I was born and raised and haven't really left. So I just stuck around. So that's where I'm calling from.
Oh, Bountiful, we're proud of you. I'm sorry. That's awesome. I'm glad that. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? That's what I say.
Yes, yeah. It's a great city, great place to grow up, great place to raise kids, and so yeah, no need to move.
Fantastic. I love it.
All right. Well, Keenan, start us off with how you ended up in Scotland.
So I had put my mission papers in, and that's where I got assigned. So I was just beyond grateful for that. When I was going through the process, there were some things that had come up that had delayed getting a call immediately. This was back in 2005. And so the mission process was different. For us, we were still getting mail and waiting for it to come. And so, usually
Yes.
you expected the process to take about a month. And if it took longer than that, you really started to worry, is it stuck in the mail somewhere? Is it, lost? What's going on? And, after a few weeks, my bishop contacted me and said, the mission department has a few extra questions for you, answered those. And so, after that, I thought it was smooth sailing, but it still took about another 2 months.
Wow.
And
Damn.
then I finally was issued a call. I don't know. I know where I wanted to go, but looking back, those were entirely selfish reasons. Oh, maybe I could learn this language and parlay it into a really high paying job, or go this place because of whatever feelings I was having as a 19-year-old boy that just had no clue about the world or anybody else. And so I was immediately overcome with the Spirit, knowing it was the right place to go, that the Lord knew me better than I knew myself, which was reaffirmed to me several times on my mission, that and still now as a 37-year-old man, that the Lord still knows way more than me. And recognizing the timing was actually when I was supposed to go out, not earlier and not later. And so that's how I ended up in Scotland.
And what was the timing of when you went?
So my trainer, Cameron McDonald, if I would have been out earlier, he wouldn't have been able to train me at that point, because he was training somebody else, Braden King. And so because of that delay, he was able to train me, and that relationship with him, in fact, we were just out to lunch a couple weeks ago, and so we still have a relationship now. It's something that or a relationship that's benefited me throughout my whole life, throughout my mission, and is a source of comfort and strength. And so that eternal friendship happened because of that short delay. And in the reality, 3 months is not a big deal for anybody in life, really. But when you're waiting on a mission call, it feels like an eternity, but it was certainly the right time and the right place.
So you got to the MTC when?
January 15th of 2006 to Preston. And that was a fun experience.
Before you jump into that, we want to come back to the MTC because I know how exciting that is. Did you get home?
I was going to say leaving was fantastic because I didn't have to say goodbye like they do at Provo. I just got to walk through TSA and be on my way.
Agreed. That's very true.
And it was great.
Very, very true. So did you get home January of 2008? Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Well, Keenan, for timing, I could have given you a high five on the way in as I was on the way out. So
it's true.
That's the day I left. When you got to the mission homes, when I left February, start of February. So cool. Take us to that point when you got home. What have you been up to for the last, 18 years or so?
So I have been spending most of that time going to school and working. I went to the U, got my undergraduate and graduate degrees in political science, international studies, and then a master's in public administration. I've worked for cities this whole time. The city of Bountiful at their street department and in their administration, the city of West Jordan in their administration and their attorney's office, and after with law school in there as well. And then I now work for the state courts in Utah, which I love. I spent 10 years in a YSA ward, which is about 5 years longer than I wanted to.
Yes.
I ended up meeting my wife there, and we've been married now for 7 years, and we have 3 kids, a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-month-old, and they keep us busy. So it is just a roller coaster every day with them.
Awesome. That's really great. All right. And so now you can go back, start us at the MTC. I wanted to mention, you have a great relationship with your trainer. I still have a great relationship with my greenie. See him all the time. So.
True. It's a pivotal relationship. It's so important to have a good relationship with your trainer.
It is.
And if you were a bad trainer, your greenie probably doesn't talk to you. So it's okay. It doesn't, dichotomy.
And if you were bad enough, they don't even remember your name. So
there you go.
That's it.
All right. Well, MTC, Preston, take us there, and we'll just walk through companions, areas, whatever you want to talk about, Keenan.
So that was really my first time ever traveling. I'd taken the plane to Disneyland before, but I mean, who hasn't done that? Yeah. And so, flying to Atlanta, flying overnight, getting into Preston with the time change. I remember President Winwood specifically said, "Do not take a nap, and it'll wreck you." And sure enough, there was about an hour and a half where we didn't have anything, and I closed my eyes and was out, and it took me a month and a half to adjust to the time. I'm convinced because of that one nap. If I would have just stayed awake, I would have been fine. But 7 hours.
Anyone preparing to go, listen to that.
It's true. It is very true. My goodness.
And so then we had the 2 weeks there. it was small, if I remember right. There were only about 22 of us in the MTC. We had 2 sisters and then 20 elders, split between the 3 missions, Manchester, Leeds, and Scotland. And we spent almost all of our time in class. I think our free time was like 4 hours on a Sunday, and that was it. Everything else was just programmed for us. The one thing that specifically sticks out is, so they'd broken us up in our first districts, just kind of based on the Spirit. But midway through, they had to make some adjustments, and they transitioned us into districts based on our missions. And, as we got to know each other as a group that would be going to those 3 missions, and especially Scotland, our group, they were able to pick out some of my OCD tendencies, and we had a fun experience where, I had lots of hair then, and I still do, and it's combed and groomed and stuff, and they hid my brush right before we left for
They did
Scotland.
not.
They did. And I could not get my head around it. It threw me out of sorts so bad. Like, I think I remember that was the first thing I told President Vreens was like, "I'm so sorry I look like a mess," and he must have looked at me like, "Who is this kid? Like, what is he?" Because my hair was mostly fine, but for me, I felt like I'd slept on the street that night. Which, I mean, looking back, that the hotel that they put us up in that night wasn't far from it. So, especially once they served us an English breakfast, which I was not prepared for. And so I didn't eat the beans. I didn't eat the tomato. I think I was just eating the muffin itself and like, man, I'm starving.
Then you went and hiked Pratt's Hill and you were wrecked after that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then, not to get too far ahead of myself, but, Elder McDonald tossed me the keys and said, "I can't drive, you are. So here you go." And I was, still trying to figure that out too. Like, what's the left side of the road? Like, it was, we were blessed that we made it to Dumfries that day, because we really, really should have died.
That's incredible.
But yeah, so the MTC it really was drinking from a fire hose. That, I'd been raised in the gospel. I'd had good parents that taught me everything. I had good teachers, good leaders, and I felt like I had a very good grounding in the gospel. I distinctly remember the answers to my prayers, knowing that the Book of Mormon was true, that Joseph Smith was a prophet, that we had the priesthood keys restored. All of those things had been answered for me before my mission. But the plane ride over, I remember English, he must have been in his 20s at that point, felt older, but he asked me, like, what's different about your church? And I told him about the plan of salvation. And afterwards, a couple weeks in the MTC is like, "Wow, that's not even close to the right answer. You should have started at the restoration and worked your way through." And but the MTC to me really felt like it was a exercise in putting a puzzle together. I had all the pieces. I just needed to make sure that they were in the right place. And that's what the MTC did for me, is put that gospel puzzle together, and then it clicked. And I remember the day that it clicked, that everything made sense, and how everything in the gospel was related and how the Savior stands at the middle. And that was such a blessing to be able to feel peace as we got on the train that day and made our way up to Edinburgh.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. Take us.
I was just going to keep moving forward. Like,
keep moving forward.
On to Dumfries.
That's where I started too.
Yeah, it was. If I remember right, it was the address. I want to say it was Queen Street, but I don't think so. It was just behind the stadium for Queen's Park Rangers, was where our flat was, and it was so much fun. I loved that area there. I loved the people there. There was an older sister named Kate. I should go pull out my journal and my planners to get their names right. But yeah, Kate was just such a blast and called the world as she saw it, and it was enjoyable. When I ended up leaving that area, I gave her a hug, and my companion's like, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "She's a 70-year-old lady. I don't think it matters."
That's great.
I think I may have done the same thing. It was just,
yeah,
you had to with Kate.
You had to. We had a car. I remember this. It was a red Vauxhall Corsa, but it was an older one. And so it didn't have all the niceties that some of the newer Corsas had, or what was the other one? The little 4-door car. I can't remember what it was.
The Muriva.
Yeah. That's it. Yes. It wasn't as nice as that, but we had to use our miles on that so that we could travel up to district meeting. And so we walked everywhere in Dumfries, and I thoroughly enjoyed just being able to walk around there and stop and talk to everybody. In fact, it happened to snow one day. And as we know, snow tends to just stop everything in Scotland. The plows aren't as effective and people can't drive in it. So as we were walking around, a group of young boys, the Neds as they were, just started making fun of us, and we promptly threw snowballs back at them. And I don't think they were expecting us to be as accurate as we were, and they scattered in a hurry once we hit 2 or 3 of them. And so that was just such a fun day. I think we changed our shoes 3 times, and we were one of those days where you are cold and tired and hungry, but you knew that you were engaged in the Lord's work, and you didn't feel any of those things. And, when you laid your head down at night, you knew that you'd truly done a good job. And, that was one of those special memories.
I love it. That's great.
What else from Dumfries? I think that's. I remember the people's faces. I don't remember their names, but they were certainly a very welcoming lot for a 19-year-old boy that was far from home and out of his element. And it was a great place to start a mission.
Do you remember how long you were there?
3 months.
Okay.
So it was, I remember the transfers were coming up, and, being young and naive like I was, Elder McDonald said, "Well, if President Breens gives you a choice, what are you going to choose to do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have no idea." And about 2 hours later, he's like, "You're not getting a choice. You're just going to be told." And I'm grateful that he put me out of my misery quicker, because I probably would have been lost in my head for the next couple days of what am I going to pick?
Wouldn't that be something if you got to choose where you got to go? My God, the chaos would have been completely insane.
Yes.
Were you still eating dinner every Saturday night with Jillian? Chinese takeout?
On occasion. It wasn't every week, but most of the time we were able to meet with her. I think it was probably every other week at that point, and definitely enjoyed that. We there were actually so there was a Mariah Pass who was just baptized, and she was baptized by Elder Wood and Elder Trotier. And so we were going through the new lessons with her. And then she had introduced us to her friends, Annie and Diane. And both Annie and Diane eventually got baptized. Annie towards the end of my mission, and Diane after I had come home. And so it was, it was a good opportunity to be able to be the first ones to teach them and to get them moving along the path that several others took up and continued. And so that was a good experience there in Dumfries.
Yeah, and to know that they did join eventually, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So where'd you head from there?
I went to Falkirk with Elder Boughton, and spent 4.5 months there, 3 with Elder Boughton and 6 weeks with Elder Cotton Bettridge. And that was a wild ride. For some reason, with I'm forgetting his name. He was from St. George, but he was best friends with Elder Cotton Bettridge. There was
St. George. Was it Chance Evans?
That's the one. That's who it was.
Good job. Good job, Zach.
They had like, I mean, I'd been out 6 months at that point, and Elder Cotton Bettridge, he was a senior companion. And Elder DeTavio was in Sterling, and they're like, we're having Lyle Borders. That's who it was.
Okay.
And, they're like, we're having a sleepover in Livingston, and so everybody hopped on the bus. And so we went down there. They all came to Falkirk. And, I remember distinctly cooking up, what was it, like me in the kitchen making the Samoan sandwiches for everybody while they're playing board games in the living room at Falkirk. And yeah, so
they made you cook. That's so messed up, Keenan. Come on.
I was the only one who could make them. They all wanted one. I was the only one that could make them. And so, lots
that
of
makes sense.
Group activities together in that district with Elder Cotton Bettridge, and why they all got put together, I don't know, but they did. So
that's fantastic. Oh my goodness.
That was so Falkirk was and still is a branch, and so the work there was always hard and slow. Lots of knocking on doors. There was I think my second or third day in the area, Elder Boughton had told us we had to go teach a lesson, and he wasn't really familiar with the buses. I wasn't either, and so we ended up getting off at a stop that we thought was the right one, and it wasn't. And we ended up, there were no buses coming for the next hour and a half. So we thought, oh, well, we'll just walk to our appointment. And what we didn't realize is that because the map covered some of the dead space, it ended up being about an 8-mile walk down the hill. And we like missed the appointment by, 2 or 3 hours. And it was a very fun experience for me because Elder McDonald had taken care of everything. And, and so having to figure out like, okay, we've actually got to come together and figure out how to work these buses and get to where we need to go. And Elder Boughton and I, we struggled with that, but by the end we'd had a good partnership and how we could work together and get things moving forward. What ended up really helping is there was a lady who we ended up chapping across, and she invited us in. We taught a lesson. We were so excited. And, we'd scheduled a return appointment, 3 or 4 days later, something like that. And in the intervening days, she actually knocked on our door and said, I want you to teach me now. And we were shocked. Like, first of all, how did you find out where we lived? And, we don't let people come in to teach us. And she's like, oh yeah, well, everybody in the neighborhood knows where you live. I just had to ask them. And we're like, wow, this, we thought we were these pretty inconspicuous people, but apparently the whole neighborhood knew. And
that's
so,
incredible. Gosh.
Were you in a townhome there? Like
we were, yeah. It was I want to say like 109 Lauriston Street was the address. So
I served there as well.
Yeah.
They definitely knew where we lived because a couple of ladies on the street would get drunk on the weekends, and they would serenade us in the middle of the night, singing like "Good Morning, Good Mormons" at the top of their lungs. So.
Oh, that is so great.
Gosh.
Not surprised they pointed out where. Right there. That's where they live.
Oh my gosh. Jack, you've never shared that story. That's hilarious. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, they were. It was a pretty, I liked it. It was a fun little neighborhood, and you were right next to the bus stop, and there was a good little chippy next door too. And so it was a fun little flat. From the second floor, you could actually look out and see the Falkirk football stadium. And so you'd always watch the games the best you could on a Saturday when you got a chance.
Nice.
But this woman who we were teaching, we took her to church, and the senior couple there, the Pascos, they had given us and this woman a ride home. And as I had sat in the back, and as I was leaning the seat forward and getting out, and she was by the door, she pinched my bottom as I was getting out. And I think I had an aneurysm. Like I'm like, oh, this is awful. What's, and, based on, the area that I'd started in and seen what trouble missionaries had gotten into with the people they were teaching, I wanted no part of that. And so, I think this happened like a day or two after President Fredericks had arrived in Scotland. And so I called Elder DePold and I'm like, you have got to help me. President Fredericks isn't going to know what to do. You will tell me what to do. And, he was really helpful in that. And he's like, end it, tell her you're not going to teach her anymore. And we agreed, so our last lesson happened to be in a park in a very public area. And if you'll remember, there were these little booklets that accompanied the lessons, and they were kind of short, small overviews of each principle. And so we'd left her with the restoration and said, well, that's all we teach. So, if you want to know more, go to the church. But, as missionaries, we don't teach any more than this. But I will always remember it because she referred to them as prophets and apostrophes, not prophets and apostles. And so even to this day, I still just think of that in my mind I know the prophets and apostrophes are true. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, that was a very, very fun and exciting, moment there in Falkirk that I'll never forget.
Oh yeah, definitely. So where'd you go from there?
I went up to Peterhead, and that was I spent 6 months there.
Say it right. Say it right, Keenan.
Peterhead. And the blue tune,
right.
And the at the time, the Buchan Ward met in Buchan High School, and so as a joke, we always said we knew the high school was true because they didn't meet.
You didn't have a kirk. So you
no,
say it's
no, they have one now, or so Google Maps and Google Earth tell me.
It's true.
I want desperately one day to go into that building and say, I remember when you guys were working hard to get that and get your attendance up. The 6 months there, I was able to be there for both equinoxes. So the longest day and the shortest day of the year. And boy, were those long and short days. I think on the long days, the sun set at 1 a.m, and on the short days, it sat at 2 p.m. And we were pretty well done by 5 o'clock because nobody was opening their doors after dinner. And
we get it.
Yeah.
Lots of reading.
Jack trained me there in January and February. So we get it. I mean, you knock on doors and they're like, what time is it? Because they don't know. It's just dark.
Yeah. It was just such a wonderful place. And I'm sure you probably lived in the same flat above the little old lady. Oh, you didn't?
We didn't. No, they closed Peterhead after we left for what, maybe 6-7 months before they reopened it. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we lived just off the big roundabout right as you came into town.
Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
So yeah, I know it's a different flat though.
Yeah, it was big. It actually had 4 or 5 rooms and a conservatory on the back and a huge kitchen. It was the only flat that I had that actually had an American style water heater, as opposed to the little wall mounted ones that you had to turn the dials on. And so, yeah, we took nice, long, warm showers that you didn't always get.
Yeah, definitely the different flat. That's for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But that area, we had a less active member who we were working with is Big Al was his name. He ended up, with all less actives in Scotland, you end up helping them with some of their struggles and efforts, and he had many. I still remember to this day, and still call it this. He had a pornography addiction, but he always labeled it prawn, P-R-O-N. So his mom wouldn't know what it was. And to this day, I can't think of it as porn. It's prawn. And so when I call it that, other people just look at me and I have to remind myself, I'm like, that's you're not 19 anymore, and that joke's not funny. And so, but he ended up passing away, which was different as a missionary to attend a funeral. That isn't something that happens regularly as a missionary, and as a being in a land of fashion, I made a pilgrimage to Primark to get myself a nice black funeral tie that you don't normally take on a mission, because I was told by the members under no uncertain circumstances should I dress like I'm happy. and so I respected that, and to see different funeral customs was neat. That it was different. It was the first time I'd ever heard the Old Rugged Cross, and that I still think of that song for funerals. That it was a very traditional Christian song, and we ended up still visiting his mother. Oh, I have to step back. So he passed away in October, on Friday the 13th. And right before bed, I told Elder Coford, we made it through the day and nothing bad happened. And about 2 hours later, we got a phone call that let us know what happened. And we didn't make it through that day. And just given the superstition that surrounds that day, I won't ever forget it. But we also had the opportunity to teach a lady named Isabella Mowat. She was a recent convert as well, and she was well into her 90s. She loved having us around, and so we'd go over and we'd spend Saturdays with her. And given that it was January and February, she loved rugby and made us watch the Six Nations with her, and I fell in love with the Six Nations, and so nice. That was a highlight every Saturday to go watch a rugby match, and still make an effort all these years later to try and catch the Six Nations.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Cool. And so there was that. We got to travel down to Bridge of Dawn in Aberdeen quite frequently. I was just telling my wife that when I was in Aberdeen, that was when Elder Oaks came to the mission, and we ended up having to leave church early so that we could get down there that Sunday evening for the things that we needed to be there for, and for Monday as well. Also, so I'm going to ask you, Zach, did we boo President Nelson when he called us the England-Scotland mission at the, or was it more of like a jeer or a cheer? But because I remember it as a boo. Do you remember that?
Not with perfect recollection, but I do remember some noise that was made to our now prophet,
Yes.
With his slip of his tongue. But
yes, and I do remember President Breen putting his hand on his shoulder and correcting him. But I just want, because I remember a boo, and that's how I've told the story. So I just want to make sure that I'm telling the right story, that the Scotland mission booed President Nelson, when he called us an English mission, which, to be fair, every one of the Scots would have stood behind us because they would have done the same thing. So we were missionaries that took the culture to heart.
Yeah, we did the polite thing. The Scots would have stood up and started a brawl of some sort.
Quite
complete anarchy at that moment.
Yeah. And so, yeah, while I was there in Aberdeen, we, I also, that would have included August as well. So, in that area, we were able to go down to the Tattoo, and I distinctly remember sleeping on the floor with Zach and Brant and the rest of the zone as we were all traveling down together on that one. So that was certainly one of my favorite districts and zones, because of the closeness that we shared, all just being up north like we were.
One thing you cannot go without saying in our time there was Disney movie night.
That's right. Yes. And so I love showing the YouTube videos of that to my daughter, and she's 6, and even still she just like rolls her eyes like, this is so lame, and she's 6. But that was so much fun.
Yes.
I loved it.
The question that's been on my mind for almost the last 20 years is, where did you get the striped shirt and the kerchief that you wore around your neck when you were the gondolier for Harlow and Covert? Do you remember?
I remember the outfit. I do not remember where I got it. I can't remember if I picked it up from like a charity shop, or
you might have, because that's where Kofor got his dress. You remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
And mind you, I think back on that, like, we got no permission to have a missionary dressed up like Ariel in the boat.
Oh, not at all.
But it was so funny and so memorable that I guarantee that there are people still in the Aberdeen stake that talk about that to this day.
Yeah. And, Aberdeen was off the beaten path, and I think we were good missionaries, but we might have been a little fast and loose with some of the rules. Elder Fenton, I know, would shave, maybe every other day, and one weekend pretty well had a full beard, before somebody's like, you really need to shave.
Well, Dan was one of those people that he had a 5 o'clock shadow at like noon, because he had the darkest, thickest beard. And so I remember I used to give him grief because he was in my district when I was the district leader in Hamilton. I was like, did you shave this morning? He's like, I swear I did, Elder Hewlett. I swear I shaved this morning. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it to you. I mean, he could grow a pretty good beard.
Yes, he could. It did not take very long. He was a great companion as well. I want to say that's when we'd rented the minibus and taken it over to not Oban, but certainly there, the branch,
the port city.
Yes, all the way over. What was it?
Ullapool.
Yes, yeah, it was Ullapool. And
I went home before that happened there, but I did hear about it from Peacock.
Oh yeah, that was so much fun. That there's a family branch, one a family and one member, and so there's 5 of them out there in Olapool, and they had a young man, and so the stake basically took a bunch of young men out to Olapool to play with this young man, and so he could have association with members and youth his age, and that was such a wonderful, memorable experience. We got to drive through the Highlands, and that was, I'll never forget it. That was my chance, and just beautiful, and to play football on the coast while the waves are rolling in and low fog. It was,
amazing.
An amazing day. So grateful for that opportunity. And you always, looking back, you felt guilty because you probably spent 8 hours driving and 2 to 3 hours actually interacting with somebody. But part of that is that we might not have been working, but we were building friendships, and we were it was one of those things where I think about section 130 in the Doctrine and Covenants, that same association that exists here is going to exist in heaven, and just spending time with people is equally important. And that wasn't a lost day, even though we might not have been knocking on doors. We were fellowshipping and strengthening each other in that exercise, and it was a great day.
I love it. So you had Coford for how long, and then Elder Fenton for how long?
Coford for 3 months and Fenton for 3 months, and
nice.
And then moved on from there. But that was there was so much. There was Elder Chambers that was in that district, and that was so much fun. The Orchards were up there with us as well.
That's right,
if I remember right.
I had forgotten their name until you just said it, so I appreciate that.
Let's see Elder Gustafson was the most homesick missionary, and everybody was telling that because he built a shrine to his girlfriend at the time.
That's right, I forgot about that.
And a shrine isn't even doing it justice. Like he had pictures and candles and all sorts that he missed this girl, and everybody told him, like, just forget it. She's not going to be there when you get home. You need to get over this, and you're making yourself worse because of your shrine. And
we were so mean to him about that, but eventually it's like tearing off a Band-Aid. Like, just get it over with. Like,
I'd feel remorse if they actually would have gotten married, but they didn't. And so it's like,
true.
We were right. We could have saved you months of heartache if you would have just listened to us, but you didn't. And
I think he got Dear John like his 3rd transfer or something like that.
Yes,
like
and
it was not
2 to recover, and by the end he'd got himself on his feet. But yeah, that was I want to say her name was Molly, if I remember right. Molly something.
Gosh, if you remember, that's fantastic. Ryan, come on the podcast and we'll verify that. That'd be great.
Yeah, there was so much fun to be had up there in the Aberdeen zone. I loved it up there.
And we played Capture the Flag one time, Cruden Bay, right? At
Slains Castle. Yeah. That was the ruins right there on the coast, and it had its little dungeon, and we played sardines and Capture the Flag, and climbed up and down and all over that castle.
That's right.
It was a fun place to play.
I remember when we talked to Chambers, he set the record straight. He's like, I was the person that climbed to the top of the castle, and I had no idea how to get down, and I completely forgot about it because of all the people, I thought, maybe Coveford, maybe Gustafson, but I never pictured Chambers, and of course it was him. So I'm glad that he set the record straight with that. It was hilarious.
Yep, he was there, and we usually took pictures on the arches. That's as far as I would climb, but I didn't ever go up the tower. And one of my favorite pictures is the ones that we always took down in the dungeon, with the flash. And so,
yes.
With our poor digital cameras at the time, we all had bright red eyes and
that's right.
And, flashing our gang signs in the dark. In fact, I remember that we were playing, we'd play because Elder Oliver would bring his hacky sack with him everywhere.
Right.
And we just, we'd play in the grass just off there to the side of the castle, the hacky sack games. And it was so much fun.
That's right. I forgot that they had come down for that.
Yeah.
And that was thanks to, if timing was right, it was Howard that drove down from Elgin with the 4 of them in there. That was just fantastic. It was
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That happened.
Oh. So good. So after Peterhead, where did you go?
I went down to Hamilton.
Oh man, love that place.
Yeah, it was great. I was super sad to learn that they'd closed the ward there and combined them with Motherwell. I was sad, but so I was there with was Elder Borgelfoss.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so I was there with Elder Borgelfoss for 3 months, and he'd actually been there longer, and so I thought that he would have been moved and I would have stayed, but that's not how it worked out. And at the end, we actually had Elder Money with us for about 4 days. He was moving out of the office, and so we had a three. The only time I was in a threesome was with them, and it was enjoyable enough that we were able to just enjoy each other's company before we started picking on one another. It like threesomes do, and find the weak one in the moment. And so I never had that experience, but Hamilton was such a great area. That's where my first baptism happened. Her name was Jean Cadigan, and she was a good lady. She was an honest seeker of the truth, and she was thick-skinned and Scottish, and she had a lot of reasons that she could have used to not be baptized, and she didn't let those stand in her way, and she did it. And it was a really good experience. We we ended up having another member pass away too, and I remember conducting her funeral, or not conducting her funeral, but being at it. And it was so different to see, as I'd mentioned earlier, Big Al's funeral that was, non-denominational, to a Scottish LDS funeral, and it was really really spirit-filled. That family, the Lewises, it is the family there in Hamilton, and it was their grandmother. But funny enough, their youngest daughter, Sister Lewis, ended up serving in the Layton Mission here in Utah. and she was in our ward. And so I was able to meet with her, and she said, "Oh, I'm Scottish." And I'm like, "Yes, I can hear that. Where are you from?" And she said, "Hamilton," and said, "I served there." And I was able to show her pictures of her dad from 20 years ago, where, she's like, "Oh man, my dad's young and skinny." And, that was, because at the time, Brother Lewis Joe Lewis was in the young men's, and we got the opportunity to teach them to play baseball, which they weren't good at, but they loved, and do a lot. That was by far the biggest young men's group that we ever served with. There were 9 young men, and that was what a lot of our efforts as missionaries were directed at, was helping strengthen those young men, with the youth as our focus, even that far back. And
most of those young men were the Wark family.
Yes, they were.
Love those boys. My gosh,
Callum and Lewis, and the Warks were great.
Was Aaron already on his mission by this point? Ryan would have been too, right?
Aaron was just putting in his papers.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so he left right after I had left the area.
Okay.
And that was such a good ward.
Oh. Did you spend much time with my favorite friend there, Winifred Terrett? Yes.
Winifred was, we went to dinner with Winifred every Sunday night. She sent home, gifts to my mom that I think my mom even still wears that necklace to this day, I think.
That's cool.
I remember I was given my, as we know, Winifred was a devout Catholic, and I was given my little sheet that said there's a monk that's praying for me, on my birthday every day of the year. And I think about that monk when my birthday rolls around, and she took us to Elder Borgelthos and myself to Stirling Castle and to the Wallace Monument, which I wouldn't, I didn't have the time or even the knowledge necessarily when I was in Falkirk to know that I should spend a P day doing that. And so she remedied that and took us there, and that was a great day to spend at Stirling Castle and the Wallace Monument.
Yeah, she was good to all the missionaries like that. I was only there for 6 weeks, and I had no idea that was something she did. Otherwise, I might have suggested we do those things. But everyone else who spent at least a couple of transfers around there had that opportunity to go and see some of the local sites, as well as those that were in relative proximity, which is pretty cool. She made those experiences all the more enjoyable for those that were in the area.
She did. She got us to go to Mass, which I enjoyed as well. That was a good learning experience as well. One of the, as you mentioned, that she had a friend who passed away, and so we provided service for her. We helped clean her friend's things out. But I was able to get 2 things from that I carried with me the rest of my mission. One of them was a typewriter, and so I used that typewriter to write my president's letters the rest of my mission.
You did?
Yes.
That's amazing.
If we pull them out, they're all typed and, clickety clack. And the other thing that she gave me was this awesome cane. And so I'd always just use my cane in the flat. And those were 2 things that I didn't have space for in my luggage because of the weight and the size. And I think back, I'm like, I should have sent those home. I shouldn't have just left them, but I loved my cane. And
can you imagine the shipping costs on a typewriter from the UK to Utah? Man,
I know, but it was
fortune.
It was pretty small. It was,
okay,
12 inches by, it was really small. And so that's how I was able to keep carrying it with me from area to area.
That's cool. And, I love it.
Yeah, it was. And Hamilton was an older town too, so you got to see some of that old architecture and brick and stone buildings that were just always cool to see.
Now I'm curious, did you ever get up to Uddingston and just smell the candy factory that was there too? Because that was one of my favorite parts of the area, was to walk around town and it just smelled like those like caramel bars. That's one of my favorite treats over there.
Yeah, so where did I go? Oh, from Hamilton I went to Dalkeith, but I did eventually end up in Springboig. And so got to walk Springboig 2, I think it was. Because that was on the south and Springboig 1 was on the north of East Glasgow. But we got to walk past the Tunnocks factory every day, and it was great.
One random story I had recently, I ran into some people that they said we're from Glasgow, and I said, which part? And they said, we're near Hamilton. I said, are you from Uddingston? And they went, how did you know that? I was like, because I walked through the town and smelled the chocolate factory on every day. They thought it was fantastic. So
yeah,
it's so good. I love that place.
It is. It really is. Yeah, and until you've had Tunnocks, like, you don't know the power that marshmallow can have with chocolate.
Yes,
and
that's so good.
Trying to explain it without having one is just, you can't do it. Same with the taste of Iron Brew. Like, there's no way you can describe the taste of Iron Brew if you've never had it.
Amen to that. It's very true. I love it. So Dalkeith after Hamilton?
Yep, Dalkeith. I whitewashed in with, you trained him.
Dustin Marsh.
That's the one. Yep. Elder Marsh and I whitewashed in.
Okay, nice.
And it was awesome because at that point Elder Marsh had been out for 18 months. I had been out for 16 and a half. And our ability to teach and work together in sync and rely on the Spirit was pretty well as good as you could get. And, the area was whitewashed because there was no work going in. That first Sunday, we were able to find 2 people on the street. We taught one lady and her 2 kids, and the first week we had 5 people at church. And nice. The members were just blown away, like, what's going on? And
good for you.
We ended up having other people come in as well through referrals, and and really were able to get the area moving again.
It's amazing. Love it.
Elder Marsh ended up his cancer came back during that transfer, and so he was sent home for 3 weeks so that they could do some surgery and get it checked out, and so had an emergency transfer come in, and that was, I forget the elder's name, but it was for about 4 days that we had him. But yeah, and then Elder Webb's the one who emergency transferred in and spent about a week with him, and then Elder Postak came in, and that was an enjoyable area that we had a lot of fun.
Very good. And then you went shortly after that to Springboig?
Yep, and that's where where I finished my mission with Elder Kofid and Elder Marconi, and it was I was where my second baptism happened. Jennifer Amos, and she had her 3 kids, Callum, Craig, and Baby. She was from Ghana, and just a deeply faithful woman, full of faith in God. And she ended up moving either back to London or Ghana shortly thereafter. But she had that African faith, and was really a pleasure to get to know. There was a woman, I can't remember her name now, but
Sister M.
Yes, yeah, there was Sister M. Had dinner with her every Sunday too. Both sets, Springboig 1 and 2, as the 4 missionaries in that ward, we'd catch the bus up and go have dinner with her. There was Brother Goldberg too, and his little hummings along, you know, everywhere he walked. That's how he went about it, and he was just such a bright and positive man.
It's great
that it was enjoyable. Springboig, for its own reasons, was probably one of my most memorable areas as well. I loved it there. Probably again because it's where I finished. You know, where you start and where you end, always those bookend areas hold a special place. I was grateful that area allowed me to be enthusiastic enough that I could work to the very last hour before I had to get on the train and go to the mission home. There were a couple sweet experiences that I had. The first being that we, you know, with timing, as we talked about at the beginning, something had happened earlier in the morning. We were slow getting out the door, forgot something, went back, and we ended up on a bus, and we were just sitting there. And Annie, who I'd mentioned from Dumfries, she was like, Elder Price. And I'm like, yeah, you know, and she's like, you know, and I'm like, oh, hi, how are you? And that's when she had told me she'd been baptized, you know, a couple months earlier, and that she was preparing for the temple, and she just didn't know how to contact me. And here we are in Glasgow, which is, you know, near Dumfries, and she's on a bus, and we happened to meet and to be able to talk. And what it was not coincidence, it wasn't serendipity, it was the Lord's hand in making sure that we were on the right bus at the right time, and that she could tell me her good news, and that I could, you know, encourage her to keep moving forward as well, and quietly see the fruits of my labors as well. That that there's a lot of hard work that Scottish and Irish missionaries do that they don't ever see what happens, and to be able to see that on a random bus in, you know, Tollcross, Scotland is just crazy to think about how much the Lord is in the details. And one of those other sweet experiences was the elders there in Springboig 1. They had baptized two, a mother and her daughter, and they were picking up somebody for church, and they didn't make it on time to confirm their recent converts. And the bishop kind of looked around like, where are they? And so, he just said, Elder Price, take care of it. So I went up, and this mother and the daughter who had been taught and baptized, and I didn't know anything about, I gave them blessings and conferred the Holy Ghost on them. And that to be able to feel the Spirit work through me, because they were as different a blessing as you could give. The language was different. The promises were different. Even the tone and the encouragements were different. And I could tell that this wasn't me, because I didn't know them. I didn't know what they needed, but the Spirit gave me in that moment to give them their blessings. And that was Sunday, and I went home Tuesday, and I won't ever forget those experiences, because it was to me a quiet reassurance from the Lord that I had done what had been asked of me, and that I had done well. I had acted my part.
Well said. I had a similar experience with Sister M. I was in Springborg for 2 weeks, middle of my mission, and I didn't know her at all, because I had been there for such a short time. And I was with Elder Bear, and we walked into her home, and she needed a blessing. She wasn't feeling well for some reason. She didn't even know my name. She said, "The Biggin." And I gave her a blessing, and it was exactly the same thing. Like, I wasn't sure what I needed to share with her, but I shared what I felt, and it wasn't me. It was definitely the Lord. So love those experiences that, as you said, confirm that you're just a tool in the hands of the Lord in those moments in time to bless his children, which is awesome. So thank you for sharing that, Keenan. That's awesome. I love it.
You're welcome. Can I bring up the elephant in the room that
Hammer time?
No, we'd
Go ahead.
be here for another 2 hours.
Can you give us your synopsis of Hammer Time real quick, Keenan?
I hated it, and I didn't feel like that was how the gospel worked, or how the Lord would ever conduct himself. I was thinking about that just the other day. So I work for the state courts. I wear a tie every day. I wear a white shirt every day just because I like it. And I was thinking, at one point I was limited to 15 ties because that was some arbitrary rule, which is ridiculous. Like, I've got 200 in my closet now. Like, not a big, anyway, like, totally beside the point. I did not like Hammer Time. And that was, I felt, at times like, Scotland was walking the mission, and that experience for me was walking through a rose patch, that I felt like I was being pricked and poked and prodded every single day, and I didn't like it. And I was questioning why I was walking through a rose bush every day. And coming home and looking back, I didn't see a single prick or a single poke or thorn. It was a beautiful field of roses, and the good memories and the joy that I felt far outweighs the frustrations that I had with other 19-year-old boys that were just trying to figure it out, with certain circumstances, and to be more patient and understanding, because it really was a good experience in the end.
That was beautifully said. Thanks, Keenan.
But again, with the timing, I know that we've been working on trying to get me on, but I get to be the first to talk about a temple in Edinburgh.
That's true.
Amazing.
It's true.
I never thought I would see the day. I always thought that Preston would be close enough. I had a friend text me. He's like, they're getting a temple in Edinburgh. The Lord must really love them. And I responded, yes, but they've finally started to love the Lord, and that's why they're getting a temple. I never thought that there would be enough faith or strength or enough members to support a temple, and that they're getting one is just so awesome and cool. You and all the listeners would appreciate. I was thinking through my head, where's this temple going to go? Are they going to tear down the mission home and the chapel, and they're going to put a temple right on, Spy Law? The calling to neighborhood's going to lose its mind. They won't like that. Is it going to go on the outskirts of Edinburgh, Falkirk area, or, is Edinburgh just kind of a general name, and it's going to be in Glasgow, where there's the Paisley steak and the Glasgow steak and a little bit more concentration? And, and so I was just, running through all the places in my mind that the temple could be, or even, across the Forth, and it's there in Dunfermline, and, where's this going to go?
Yeah, I've had that thought too. And I thought the best place would be like where the motorway from Glasgow comes to where the Forth Row Bridge comes together. Like, just put it right there where everybody
Absolutely.
coming into Edinburgh has to go, what is that? We have to know what that is. I mean, that's my perception. That's the gospel of Zach speaking there. But again, I'm sure wherever they put it, somebody on Facebook this weekend said, maybe they should just put it on the top of Arthur's Seat. It'd be fantastic. Right. Right on top of the hill next to the castle. It'd be awesome. So
that would be, or even at the bottom of Princess Street, like castle on one side, temple on the other, Holyrood off to the left.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it'll be fascinating over the coming years to learn more about that. And obviously through this podcast, we will share all the more the optimism as spoken by many, that we will have a reunion of sorts at the temple at some point. That'll be flipping amazing.
It will be. Yeah. I haven't made it back to Scotland. My wife, she served her mission in France. And so at some point we have got a grand European adventure planned where we'll tour her mission in France and mine in Scotland, and see some awesome of the great sites. And it will, we'd planned on that, but knowing that there's going to be a temple waiting for us in Edinburgh, I might be willing to push that out just a little bit longer to be able to have that sweet experience.
And your young ones will appreciate that too.
They will. Yes,
cool.
They will.
I love that. That's so cool. Thanks for bringing that. It's not an elephant at all. It's the most glorious thing that we could have talked about on the podcast, beyond the amazing memories of you, Keenan.
Well, and I guess, that's good. Good production work right there, that you bring the biggest thing up at the last, make them stay for the whole time.
It's true. Very, very, very well said. We are professionals, as you can tell. It's great.
We ask everybody, Keenan, what specific memories you have of the mission presidents that you served under and their wives.
I President Vreens and Sister Vreens were amazing. I loved them. I only got to spend 6 months with them, but their ability to listen to the Spirit, to love, were unequaled. I remember in my final interview with President Vreens, he looked me square in the eye and said, "It's not where you serve in a mission, it's how you serve, and you can be a successful missionary without ever leading." And I didn't know at that moment what he was saying, but that I didn't end up having any leadership opportunities outside of the MTC, and I never got to train. I never got to have a leadership position, which helped humble me. That was a good thing. Going back, I remember, I can't remember the elders' names, but it was around Christmas time in the last area, and they had Elder Lucas and several others did their musical traveling group, and Elder Marconi was the pianist. I think
you're right.
Something. And so, all the companions were musically inclined except for me. So I was the odd one out with this group. So I just kind of tagged along. But there was a day where they were all practicing and a couple were gathered around. And I remember some new missionaries coming up and saying, "We have an investigator who's asking us about the 12 tribes." And I was able to take 2 years worth of study and knowledge and a piece of chalk there in the Julian Avenue building, and we drew out the whole Old Testament and taught it the best that I could. And teaching missionaries was such a fun experience, and that's when I realized that President Vreens was right 18 months earlier, that you didn't need to lead to be a successful missionary, to learn the gospel, to teach others, and that he would say something like that went to the deep love and caring concern that I felt from him, as well as his ability to communicate what the Spirit wanted.
Yeah.
I love President Fredericks as well. I felt like I learned a lot, that he helped me to grow in ways that I didn't know that I needed, being 19 and 20 and young and dumb and stupid. And he was very patient with me. And as we finished in the mission home, he said, I want to be able to come to your church and find you there. And that's how, if I ever need to find you, that's where I can find you at, is at your ward. And that was a great thing for me to feel within my heart and know that he could always find me in the ward that I was supposed to be in. And even today, I still kind of think, well, is this the Sunday President Fredericks is going to show up and I'll find him here? It isn't. I doubt that he would come to my ward. But I do think of him and Sister Fredericks a lot.
It's wonderful. Ultimately, I think that's one reason why you still have a nice head of hair, Keenan, is you didn't have to deal with some of the stress that went along with training missionaries or shepherding them as we did as leaders. So
yeah. And thinking back, that did my best, but I was, probably still needed my own corrections and guidance as well. So I feel bad for those that had to lead me. I probably wasn't easy, but for a different set of reasons.
I'm going to raise my hand right now, Keenan, and say that you are one of the most stalwart, faithful. You kept everybody in the right. Let's be honest. The Bridge of Dawn elders with Quinn Coford was a tornado waiting to happen, and you kept the reins on that tornado. So thank you for doing that for the period of time you did, because you need some reason within those companionships once in a while. So
yeah,
I give you props. That's for sure.
Yeah, thank you. That feels nice to hear, because sometimes I felt like my head was bloody from banging against the wall. Like, how am I gonna stop this? Like, can't we just one P-Day? Can't we just take a nap? Like, can't we do that?
No, you were excellent, and it was a true joy to have spent however many months we were together. It was what, 4.5 months before I went home,
I think.
Yeah,
because I want to say you were with Elder Pattenden for, was it 3 months?
Yeah, I had him for 3 months and Peacock for 3 months.
Yeah. So 4.5, because I came in your second transfer with Pattenden.
That's right, because I was there when Coford got trained by his trainer. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, Keenan, we really appreciate you taking the time and coming on the podcast. This doesn't happen without participants like yourself. And
thank you.
It's always wonderful to visit with fellow missionaries. Like, we have unique experiences in a unique place that tie us together, and there's a lot that goes along with that. So, including being able to just rejoice when they announce a temple in that land.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
And Keenan, we want to express our love to you as our brother in Scotland.
Definitely. I love you, Keenan, and you know that. You're one of my favorites from the mission. You have that same smile, that jovial persona about you, and it's just been so much fun to share an evening with you tonight talking about fond memories. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciated it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk with you as well. This has been a wonderful and memorable experience. Thank you. And thank you for helping me record some of the things that happened. I wasn't a diligent journalist like I should have been. And I think there were small things that might have fallen through the cracks that were in the back of my head, but not on paper. And this helped memorialize some of those. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. You'll be surprised too, as you get that bike and you start listening to the podcast, how many of the other memories will start to come up as you listen to some of your fellow missionaries from your era of Scotland. So definitely make it a priority, even if you get it in 10-minute chunks. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm not your scheduler, but come back on for round 2. All the things I missed. I don't think I'm important enough to get a 2-part episode, but
rubbish. That's rubbish. You know it. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Keenan. We love you. We'll give you a hearty cheerio, and we'll talk to you more soon. All right, brother?
Thank you. See you guys.
All right. Cheerio, brother. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.